Your iPhone has lots of features that Apple barely advertises. Every year during WWDC, Apple announces the new iOS to the world, and it proudly showcases the big headline features. But often, and only by digging into support or developer documentation, you can find new iOS features not shown during the keynote. These are the iPhone features Apple should have made more obvious. All official links will be in the description. This video is sponsored by the like button. Click it below to find out more. If you've ever used your iPhone to create videos, especially creating content, then you're going to understand this audio problem. See, the iPhone's built-in microphone is fine for a phone call, but it's not fine for a video you actually want to sound great. So the first feature on this list fixes that. Now, it does require you to own AirPods, but iOS allows you to use them as a wireless microphone for your videos. Access to this feature requires iOS 26, and it may not be available in all countries or regions, and your AirPods must have the H2 chip in them. So at the time of recording, that's AirPods 4, AirPods Pro 2 and 3, or AirPods Max 2. To get started, open the camera app, switch to video mode, pull down Control Center, and then tap Camera Controls. Under audio and video, select your input and pick your AirPods. You'll also see mic mode under options with 4 settings. Voice isolation is the one you'll want for noisy environments. It's the same processing Apple uses on phone calls, and it does a great job. It's worth pointing out that I have access to this feature here in the UK as we are not part of the EU, but it's worth checking Apple support pages for the region that you live in. Of all the features Apple announced for iOS 26, this next feature is only a sub-note of the official iOS 26 feature page, but it has been requested for years, and that's custom alarm snooze duration. Every single iPhone alarm since the original iPhone in 2007 has snoozed for exactly 9 minutes. And the reason for that has nothing to do with Apple. You see, in 1956, GE Telecom released the snooze alarm, the first mass market alarm clock with a snooze button. But the mechanism couldn't extend cleanly by a full 10 minutes because of how the gears of the clock were made, and so the engineers settled on 9 minutes. So then, almost 70 years later, that decision was still inside your iPhone. That is until iOS 26, when Apple added a setting to change it. Open up the clock app, tap any alarm, and make sure that snooze is toggled on, then tap snooze duration. You can now set it from anything from 1 to 15 minutes. One thing worth knowing, this setting is per alarm and not universal. So if you've got a workday alarm and a weekend alarm, you'll have to change the duration on each one individually. There is no global toggle. Do you remember back in the day when the only way to use a flashlight on your iPhone was to get a third-party app? Well, when iOS 7 came out in 2013, Apple built a flashlight into iOS. But it took until iOS 18 in 2024 for Apple to introduce adjustable flashlight beam. You open up the control center, tap the flashlight icon, and the dynamic island expands into a small panel with a slider. You drag it vertically to change the brightness, and on Pro iPhones, you can drag it horizontally to widen or narrow the beam. Now, the horizontal slider works on phones with Apple's adaptive True Tone Flash, which is a 3x3 grid of 9 LEDs that Apple has built into its Pro phones since the iPhone 14 Pro in 2022. Regular iPhones use a simpler dual LED flash called True Tone Flash, not to be confused with adaptive True Tone Flash. So the beam on those iPhones cannot be controlled in the same way. You just get brightness but not beam width. Did you know that you can dial someone on your iPhone by typing their name on the number pad just like a Nokia 3310? And it's called T9 dialing, and it's not a new technology. It's actually more than 2 decades old. But in iOS 18, Apple finally added it to the iPhone. You open up the phone app, go into the keypad tab, and tap the letters of someone's name on the number pad. So to call mum, tap 686 for MUM. And the matching contact appears above the keypad. Tap their name and it dials. There's no setting to turn this on, but there's also no setting to turn it off. Apple have just baked it in. Back in 2020, Apple turned the back of your iPhone into a button, and then they never really talked about it, and it's called Back Tap. It launched with iOS 14 in September 2020, and it works on every phone from the iPhone 8 onwards. You go into the Settings app, Accessibility, Touch, and then scroll down to Back Tap, and you'll see Double Tap and Triple Tap, each with a list of actions that you can assign. Now, most of the options are standard system controls, like taking a screenshot, control center, lock screen, or dark mode, that kind of thing. But the interesting one is Shortcut, because a shortcut can link to anything you've ever made using the Shortcuts app. Now, there are plenty of iPhone shortcut videos on YouTube if you want to learn more about that app after finishing this video. But the reason most people have never set up BackTap is that it's buried in the accessibility menu, for which most people only open if they specifically need an accessibility feature. For most of the iPhone's history, the only way to set a custom ringtone was to mess about with iTunes or download GarageBand, and then you have to learn how to use it. In iOS 26, Apple finally added a third way that takes about 30 seconds, which is custom ringtones from any audio file. You open the Files app on your iPhone, find an audio file in MP3 or M4A format that's 30 seconds or shorter, long press it, tap Share, and then scroll down and tap Use as Ringtone. The file will then appear in the Settings app under Sound and Haptics, ready to be set as your default ringtone, your text tone, or assigned to a specific contact. And the same trick works in voice memos. Open a recording, tap the three-dot menu, hit Share, and then Use as Ringtone. The only real constraint is the 30-second limit. So if your audio file is longer, then you're going to need to trim it first. GarageBand can do it, but so can lots of other audio editors on the App Store. Once the file is under 30 seconds, you're good to go. There's a gesture on the iPhone keyboard most people have never tried, which is holding the spacebar for half a second. Now, why would you want to do this? Because it enables Trackpad Mode on the keyboard. What happens is the letters on the keyboard fade away when you trigger it, and the whole area turns into a flat surface that you can drag your finger across. As you do, the cursor in your text moves with it. So you can land your cursor between any two specific letters instead of tapping at the screen, getting frustrated that it doesn't landed where you wanted it. For text selection, tap anywhere on the keyboard with a second finger while the first is still holding the spacebar, and the cursor enters selection mode, and dragging now highlights text instead. Apple introduced this in iOS 12 in 2018, after a more limited version that only worked on iPhones with 3D Touch in iOS 9. There's no setting for it, and there's not really a tutorial when you set up your phone, but now you know it exists. At WWDC 2025, Apple ran through the headline iOS 26 features on stage, then flashed up a slide listing 36 more features they didn't have time to talk about, and this was one of them. The camera dirt alert. And if you're on iOS 26 and have an iPhone 15 and later, the camera app can now detect when your lens is smudged or dirty and pop up a warning telling you to clean it before you take a photo or video. If it doesn't work, make sure the setting is on by going into the Settings app, scrolling down and tapping Camera, and then toggling on Lens Cleaning Hints. The next feature should have been added years ago, but Apple finally did it in iOS 18, and it's hiding unlocking apps with Face ID. You long press any app icon, and the quick action menu now has a Require Face ID option. Tap Require Face ID, and the app is now locked behind authentication. So someone holding your unlocked phone won't be able to open it. Tap Hide and Require Face ID instead, and the app disappears entirely, moving to a hidden folder at the bottom of the app library, which is itself locked behind Face ID. A couple of things worth knowing. You can lock most apps, but a handful of Apple system ones won't give you the option. The idea is that you can hand your phone over to someone and it prevents them from being nosy. The last feature is the most niche thing on this list, and Apple actually added it back in iOS 14, so nearly 6 years ago, and barely anyone knows about it. And that's long pressing the back button in Settings. See, when you're deep inside a settings menu, let's say you've gone Settings, Apps, pick an app, and then some sort of app subsetting, and you want to get back to the very top, long press the back arrow in the top left, and a vertical menu pops up showing you every screen above the one you're on, and you can tap any of them and you jump straight back there. No more smashing the back button until you reach the top. It works in plenty of Apple's apps. Files, Mail, Apple Music, and Notes are the obvious ones, and lots of third-party apps too, but your mileage may vary depending on the developer. So that's the 10. Some of these have been on the iPhones for years, but Apple barely mentions them. But every September, they spend an hour walking through whatever new chip, camera, or AI feature they want to lead with on the new iPhone, while the things that could actually change how you use your phone get quietly buried in documentation. So if you like this video, then check out the one I made on the internal Apple or partner apps that are unlisted on the App Store, but that you can download. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.